The views and opinions expressed on the following program are not necessarily those of the staff and management of Salem Media of Hawaii.
Welcome to Generations Radio, where the focus is on our seniors and their families. We are here each Saturday afternoon from 5 until 6 p.m., bringing you resourceful information with our radio team of professionals in the field of aging. Stay with us for the next 1 hour as we explore different ways to make life more exciting and meaningful for our extraordinary seniors. Right here on AM 690 The Answer. And now, here is our host and the publisher of Generations Magazine, Percy Ihara.
And good afternoon. Welcome back to Generations Radio every Saturday from 5 to 6 and Sunday from 3 to 4 on this talk radio, The Answer, AM 690. I'm here with my co-host, the newest gerontologist in the state of Hawaii, Miss Melissa Mansfield from Ultras Medical. Welcome, Melissa, again.
Thank you. Good afternoon. It's great to be here.
Yeah, well, so I'm glad you're really taking the initiative and want to learn about aging. And I know you have the academic side. I have the reality side. But I appreciate you coming here and being open to learning new things. I'm still learning, even though I've been involved with this for many years. But anyway, it's always been a topic of mine since, as we all age, we all have loved ones that pass on. And one of the topics that I've always been interested in, and I'm still learning about hospice in Hawaii and nationally, but in some of the issues, but want to have a show about hospice. And so we have two companies, St. Francis Healthcare, St. Francis Hospice, right? Dr. Terry and Miss Holly, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having us. I appreciate it.
We're glad to be here.
Yeah, likewise. I mean, I appreciate you guys. I see you guys out quite a bit. And then my longtime friend, Mr. Ken Zeri from Hospice Hawaii. Welcome back, Ken.
Thanks, Percy. How you doing?
Pretty good, pretty good. So, every time we talk about this issue, it gets to be kind of somber, and then we tell our life stories. But, at our last Aging in Place event, we had, over 1,500 people there on a Saturday this past August. And a lot of younger people were there, which was not surprising, but yet surprising. Every year goes by, we get more younger people. When I say younger, 56, 50s. I mean, that is the new 30s and 40s, right, Ken?
It seems younger just because we're getting older.
That's true, but
but we're caring for our parents.
Yeah,
and that's why.
And that's part of what we call the sandwich generation.
That's right.
I have an 11-year-old, and my relatives are 88, 86, and 93. And it's something that we all at some point is going to happen. We're all going to pass on. But hospice is such a big topic, and it's, I want to say taboo, but it's something that we don't talk about very often. Right, Dr. Terry?
Unfortunately, there's a lot of misconceptions about hospice. Hospice is often viewed as being the dying process, but hospice cherishes life, and our focus is living with dignity through the dying process and not necessarily focus on the end result. And I think that's the misconception that keeps people fearful of hospice and fearful of even opening that discussion up with their families.
You think it's a fear factor, Miss Holly, there? I mean, is people afraid to call hospice, you think?
I think so. I think that there is unknown. They have to be able to acknowledge that their loved one is dying. We all love our family and don't want to think about that possibility. And sometimes they have to, at some point, that coping mechanism of denial has to go away, and they have to accept that, hey, my loved one is dying, and therefore they're calling and reaching out to hospice. And so sometimes that initial hurdle is very difficult.
Ken?
It's painful. It's really painful to contemplate losing someone I love. And it's really painful to then make it real by bringing them into our house. And yet what we know about hospice care across the nation is probably the number one complaint is, why didn't I know about this sooner? Why didn't I start hospice care sooner?
That's the number one complaint?
I think so, yeah.
So when is the best time to call hospice?
Well, what is that process, first of all? Your dad had a stroke or has Alzheimer's, had cancer. Now, from what I understand, the doctor has to deem you have 6 months or less to live, right? That has to be documented.
Yeah, that is correct. Unfortunately, many people's past experience with hospice is related to a family member being referred to hospice very late. Yeah. And so what happens is they come onto hospice and pass away within a very short amount of time. And so there's this misconception that hospice is where you spend your final hours or days of life. And the truth is many physicians refer very late in the process. Nationally, maybe under 2 weeks. And the truth is, it's a 6-month benefit. And so people could be referred months and months earlier. But unfortunately, what happens is it doesn't quite get discussed until the writing's on the wall and there's nothing else to be done. And I'm sure you can
Terry's right. You know, Terry's right. The 30% of all people who die with hospice care die within 10 days of starting hospice care. So it really is too late. You know, the question that you asked, Melissa, when is it time? The time is when you think that when you ask yourself, would I be surprised if mom was here for next Christmas? Or let's see, we're in the fall. So would I be surprised if mom lived till Easter next year in the spring? And if I think, yeah, I'd be really surprised, then maybe it's time to have that conversation with mom's doctor, or call one of our programs and say, hey, can you come out and talk with us? Because we're all going to do that.
Yeah, I know all of you do that.
Yeah.
But what happens, what's in that process when you say does a hospital refer, a doctor refer, or does a family refer? How does that work?
Let me back up just 1 second. You know, one of the other things besides the excellent commentary that Ken just gave is if your doctors are pushing treatments on a family member that seem to just not be working and it appears to be too aggressive or against the wish of the patient or the family, where you're looking at it and saying, you know, the benefit of all this stuff is really minimal, but the doctors keep saying we should try this or that. That's a good point to say, is hospice reasonable? And I think that is something that can definitely start the ball rolling, at least with the discussion. And as far as how do you get the ball rolling, your doctor can make the referral, a family member can make the referral, and the patient can make the referral. It's actually very easy. It's a phone call.
But why is it still, 10 days, Ken? I mean, it happened to a family friend of mine. Actually, a family friend recently, and then a family relative about 2 years ago, and they both passed within almost less than 10 days.
I think Holly's right. It's because it's a painful, difficult thing to embrace, to begin to think about what is this person that I love reaching the end of their life. It's hard stuff to lose someone that you love. And I think that's kind of the hope that hospices bring, is even though it's hard stuff, we're really good at walking into that fear of the valley of the shadow of death and saying, how can we help you live as fully as possible, even in the midst of this pain? So call early.
Right. Yeah. So I can relate to that to some extent. So I've been a hospice and palliative care professional for a number of years, and recently I had to make that call to hospice for my grandmother, and it was a reality that we have a shortened amount of time with her. We, as a family, had to get on a conference call. We had to make sure that all of my aunts and uncles were all on the same page, that we all agreed that my grandmother wasn't going to make it through this process, and we as a family had to discuss and kind of work through what that looked like. And even as a professional calling the hospice, it was difficult for me to be on the other end, to be that family member, to make that call and actually have to say, I am calling because I need hospice for my grandmother. It was just that moment of, you have to accept that death is inevitable.
Dr. Terry?
The other challenge is that oftentimes discussions are not held in advance, and so we deal with many people who have diagnoses such as dementia, where our family members aren't able to tell us by the time the possibility of hospice exists, or we have a stroke or some sort of devastating illness where we wind up in the intensive care where we're unable to do this. And then family members actually opt for what the doctors are offering in the hospital because they don't know any better. They don't know what their loved one would have wanted, or they've never had that. And so they're operating more out of, well, to be safe, I'll just do what the doctor says, than potentially give up on mom or dad, and let's hold on to hope that this will get better. And unfortunately, that's where a lot of this also leads to, is because people just, there's a concept that if in some cultures, if we talk about death, we'll bring it in, we'll make it happen. And I think that does a big disservice, because then people are subjected to needless suffering with often very poor outcomes. And then they wind up with hospice and say, wow, I get all of these services and all of this support. Why didn't anybody tell us about this before?
Yeah, so true. We're here with Dr. Terry from St. Francis Hospice, Miss Holly from St. Francis Hospice, and Mr. Ken Zeri from Hospice Hawaii, along with my co-host here, Melissa Mansfield. Melissa, you wanted to cover one of those quick questions.
So I also get questions a lot. Are all hospice the same? Do they provide the same service? How do I choose? A lot of them are just unfamiliar. It's unfamiliar territory. How would you help
And
someone?
who pays for that?
Yeah, who pays for that?
Ken, you want to take that one on?
Are all hospices the same? What do you think, guys? Nah, we have a saying. Actually, we have a saying, and I'm fortunate to serve on the National Hospice Board. We have a saying: if you've seen one hospice, you've seen one hospice. All of us have a requirement to provide care, a core level of services, because of our Medicare conditions of participation. So many of the services that you'll see from programs such as St. Francis Hospice and Hospice Hawaii are the same. Doctors and nurses and social workers and nurses' aides. Each hospice adds a little bit of a different flavor to what it is they do. They may have an inpatient unit. They may have particular type of chaplaincy service. They may offer community palliative care. They may offer pediatric care. Everyone kind of does something a little bit different, but hopefully for the experience of the patient and family in their home, it's a set of dedicated professionals that are going to say, how can I ease your suffering and distress? How can I help your family prepare for this process? How can we serve you after we've died? And I'll toss the how's it paid for question over to my colleagues.
So hospice is a benefit of insurance. And so based on what type of insurance the patient has, will determine the payer source. So Medicare is a large payer source for most hospices. So there is a Medicare hospice benefit.
But Medicare is for 65 and over, though.
Correct. And so other insurance companies also have a hospice benefit, whether it's Kaiser, whether it's a Blue Cross. And as Ken mentioned, I too sit on the National Hospice and Palliative Care Board, and my specialty is pediatrics. And so there are even a pediatric hospice benefit as well. And then for families who do not have insurance, hospice does provide charity care and support. So we serve all patients regardless of their ability to pay.
Good.
Wonderful.
I appreciate that. Now, what exactly does hospice cover? I mean, does it 24/7 care? Does a doctor come see you whenever you want? Does it include medications? You know, I was with a family just recently, a family friend of ours, and, you know, of course, you know, the family was stressed out, didn't know what to do, didn't know what kind of services, and it didn't even cross their mind. How many times can you come to the house, or do they go to a facility? Dr. Terry?
There's a basic amount of service that all hospices have to provide, and that includes physician services, chaplain services, nursing services, social worker, bath aides, as well as volunteers. The hospices differ in what they can provide and how much service they can provide. The truth is, in many areas of our country, they may be only serviced by one because of the geographic area,
Sure.
very rural areas, et cetera. I think that the key when electing a hospice is to actually call the hospice and find out these specific questions, because Hospice Hawaii may be able to provide a service in your neighborhood that really appeals to your family versus St. Francis and our appeal. Not every hospice has a dedicated hospice house. And so there's lots of different things where we provide the basic thing, but then it's really what's best for your family and what's best for your fit. And I think that is how you can choose a hospice.
You know, the other things that hospice provides is we're going to pay for the prescription medications to ease that discomfort. So pain medications, sleeping medications, those things, hospice will pay for. We're going to pay for the rental of medical equipment to go into homes. So if we need a bed or oxygen or a commode, hospice will pay for that. We're going to pay for the supplies, catheters, dressings, sometimes incontinence supplies. Hospice will pay for that. I a long time ago, I admitted this gentleman to a hospice program of care, and I told him, we're going to do all this stuff, and there's no copay to you. It's 100% covered under your, at this time, you had Medicare benefit. He couldn't believe me. He said, no, come on, what's my copay? I said, no, brother, there's no copay for this. He said, no, put it in writing on the consent, right? So he wanted me to change the legal document. So I wrote, no copay, and I signed it. So there's no copay. It's almost too good to be true.
Right. And you asked about 24-hour coverage. So there's actually 4 levels of care within the hospice benefit. And that first level of care is what we refer to as routine home care. And these are patients that are cared for in their home, whatever that is, whether it's a nursing home, whether it's our care homes, foster homes, their personal home. It's a home setting. And these are patients that for the most part, their family is providing the care and support, and our staff are coming in and visiting with them at a visit frequency that works and can address all of their patients' needs. And then there is what's referred to as a general inpatient level of care. And those are for patients who have some type of symptom that needs more controlled, that can't be provided at that lower level, the routine level of care. That GIP, as we refer to it, or general inpatient level of care, is typically provided in a facility, whether that's a hospital, whether that is an inpatient unit of some sort. There's also a respite benefit, which is for families to have a break and from their caregiving. The patients are typically placed again in a facility to provide that family respite, much needed rest from that 24-hour caregiving. And then the last is a continuous care or crisis care type management. And that is usually just a short, very short time where staff would be in to help support the family on a more long-term kind of more than 1 hour.
Does that cost extra though? No?
It does not cost extra. It is part of the hospice benefit.
Do you get to keep your own doctor, or do you provide a doctor to the patients?
The answer is yes to both of those. So if you wish to maintain your own primary care doctor, and many people do because that doctor's been involved in their care for years or decades, then that is absolutely appropriate. But if you should choose to use the hospice medical director, then that is your option also. The hospice medical director is typically more trained to deal with the issues surrounding end-of-life, pain management, symptom management. The other thing is that a lot of this that we've been talking about is focused on the actual hospice patient, but some of the biggest benefits to hospice care are to the family and friends of the loved one, where we provide not only psychosocial support, but spiritual support and emotional support, really identifying, what can we do to support not only the patient, but the family and the loved ones who are surrounding. And so we really grab the ohana and take care of the ohana when we're providing hospice care.
That's great, because it seems like it really allows them to stay involved as well.
Ken?
You're right. We want that attending physician to be involved as much as they are confident and comfortable too. And sometimes it's a hybrid where both the hospice medical director and the attending are involved. You probably have seen this as well, Terry and Holly, that families that have a lot of dynamics going on in the families, when we are able to intervene and offer the support services, not only of our social work staff, but of our bereavement team, because grief support's a real important thing of what we do, they actually do better with their own grief after the patient has passed away. I think that they get some of that work underway and begin to feel some of those feelings and deal with some of those feelings. Yeah?
Absolutely. I think that the idea of supporting not just the patient but the family is core to hospice as well. We stay with that family and walk that journey with them following the death of the actual patient, if you will. So we are following them for 13 months. Actually,
13 months.
13 months. We follow them and help walk them through. We want to catch all of the first, whether it's the first Mother's Day, the first birthday, the first wedding anniversary, the first Christmas. And so our bereavement staff are there to walk with that family, walk through that process, and help them cope, making sure that we help support them picking up the pieces following that loss.
Go ahead, Dr. Terry.
Also one of the things that people, as you said, in the sandwich generation that we tend to think about is, how is all of this affecting me? One of the benefits of this support also is when we start thinking about the grandchildren, the children who, often aren't necessarily involved in the intricate details and maybe know that something's wrong with grandpa, but they don't really know what. And that gives our options for our bereavement support and our social workers to work with them also to help them, so that burden is not always placed on the family. Because oftentimes family members will come to me and say, what do I tell my kids? And so we work with them so that burden is not there. And they oftentimes just feel such great relief that somebody's able to help them on this.
Well, a family friend of ours passed away recently, and my son knew that person. And so I didn't know how to address that to my son. How would you address that?
Talk honestly. How old's your son?
11.
Talk honestly. 11-year-olds are capable of understanding what's happening. Talk about what's going on. If your son's got questions about, well, why is this person dying? Because they had bad heart disease. They had a cancer. Answer those questions that they have. Talk and acknowledge the fears and acknowledge the sadness that your son has. Let your son see your sadness about your loss of your friend, because they can understand those things. Obviously, it's different when you're dealing with a 3-year-old because of developmental tasks, with developmental processes. But get some help from professionals about how to talk to the 3-year-old. But 11-year-old should be able to really begin to understand this. Honesty and genuineness of your feelings are the most helpful for your son, and frankly will set your son on a course to be able to recognize that, frankly, death is a normal part of life. It doesn't have to be something we're afraid of. And then when it comes time for your son to take care of you, as we hope is the natural progression, your son will be able to have those early conversations that Terry and Holly alluded to earlier about, what are your wishes, Dad?
Holly?
Absolutely. So children grieve a little bit differently than adults. And it's really based on, as Ken said, where they are developmentally. They are very intuitive. They know things that we as adults think they don't know. They can sense changes in their routines. And based on their developmental stage in life and what milestones they've met, that will affect the way in which they cope. But to be honest with them, but you want to be careful of some things, such as grandma went to sleep, or that they passed away, or because sometimes kids will pick up on these words and they become afraid to sleep. Or we lost grandma, so they want to go and find her. So those are things that the hospice team can help kind of walk you through that process.
Go ahead, Dr. Terry.
I also think it's important when hospice is involved. We're often key witnesses to the grieving process that begins way before the person passes away. And we're really in tune to seeing, is the family member grieving appropriately, or do they need more intervention? And oftentimes we can intervene, or sometimes it's just a matter of saying everything that you are going through is normal. It's okay to feel these emotions, and it's okay to talk about them. And being able to do that, you're bringing in experts in this field into your home to help you. And so that's one of the big benefits of bringing a hospice team in, is that extra support and knowledge.
I think that's probably one of the most powerful things that we do, is to say to people, what you're feeling, what you're experiencing is normal, and we're going to walk with you. Yeah.
So if I elect to choose hospice, will my doctor think I'm giving up? Will my family think I'm giving up? How do I have that conversation with the family to let them know this is my decision and to walk with me on this?
Terry threw this question to me. Melissa, I think the answer is maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. So it's an important thing. Will my doctor think I'm giving up? I hope not. I hope that your doctor might think that what you're really doing is changing the focus of your goals for your health care and changing the focus of your goals for your life. Hospice never, ever means giving up. Hospice means I'm going to change my focus of how I want my care to be. Will my family think I'm giving up? Maybe somebody who doesn't understand what you're experiencing and going through might think you're giving up. That gives you a wonderful opportunity to say, I want you to understand what this is like to me and what I'm thinking about. And you can frankly get that hospice team to come in and help you have that conversation. That's a good question.
So can I change my mind?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think one of the things also is with the decision of giving up, we tend to look at all the treatments that doctors provide as providing some benefit. And we tend to look, okay, if I take this chemotherapy, I'm going to get cured of my cancer, or I'm going to live a wonderful life. What it really boils down to sitting with your doctor is, hey, I love to hold my grandchildren. I love to golf. I love to go fishing. And I can't really do it that well, but I still like to dance a little bit. Is this treatment that you're giving me going to let me keep doing those things? What are the risks of these treatments? If the doctor says, honestly, we're just trying to delay this by a month or two and you're probably not going to be fishing anymore, that's not giving up. What it is saying what you're offering me is not consistent with my values or what I feel is important. And so it's choosing what you want as opposed to what's being offered.
Good.
Good point. We're going to take a short break. We're here talking about difficult conversation of when and how do we decide on whether we want to call in the hospice services. We're here with Mr. Ken Zeri from Hospice Hawaii, Ms. Holly and Dr. Terry from St. Francis Hospice, and of course my co-host here, Melissa Mansfield. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back to talk more about this. And I wanted to also talk about that word palliative care. What exactly is palliative care? Okay, we're going to take a short break. We'll be right back.
Percy Ihara from Generations Radio. If you have any questions or want to be part of our discussion, give us a call at 296-5467. That's 296-5467. This is Generations Radio on AM 690 The Answer.
Did you know 26 million Americans have kidney disease and most don't know it?
The day I was diagnosed, I didn't know what to do. I called the National Kidney Foundation, and the young lady who answered stayed on the phone with me and walked me through step by step. She too was surviving kidney disease, and she showed me there could be life after kidney disease.
Visit the National Kidney Foundation at kidney.org. Now you know.
Moon Physical Therapy is here to help you back to recovery. Moon Physical Therapy is located on Ward Avenue across from Sports Authority. Physician prescribed for motor vehicle accidents, workman's comp, or that body pain that comes from rushing to play without warming up. Also event cardiopulmonary rehabilitation with our one-on-one patient care. Moon's Aquatherapy heated endless pool allows for low-impact exercise with less pain on land. We will give you the right exercises to get you back to health. Ask your doctor to prescribe Moon Physical Therapy. Moon Physical Therapy. We achieve results.
Aloha, this is Martha Clopin.
And Al Harrington. Choosing the right Medicare plan not only saves you money, it also helps you avoid headaches and heartaches down the road.
We want to remind everyone
to listen to a Medicare Moment with Martha, Sundays from 9:30 a.m. to 10 a.m. as we help answer important questions on Medicare so you can stay healthy, wealthy, and wise all year long.
Call me at 543-2073, 543-2073.
I was an addict from the age of 13. I finally decided it was time for a change. I walked into the Salvation Army Adult Rehabilitation Center, and that got me ready for the real world. Now, I choose to be guided by Jesus Christ, and today, I'm building a powerful and promising future, free from drugs and alcohol.
Please shop at the Salvation Army family stores. With our discounted sales, your support through your purchase helps men live a clean, sober, and productive life.
Got Vegas on your mind? Get Vacations Hawaii on the line. Vacations Hawaii offers weekly 4 and 5 night Honolulu to Vegas packages, which include 3 meals daily from $6.99. Stay at Hawaii's favorite casinos, California, Fremont, Main Street Station, and Orleans Hotel. Vacations Hawaii will get you there in comfort on deluxe wide-body 767 planes with complimentary in-flight hot meal service. Vacations Hawaii's frequent flyer program gives you future travel discounts and credits. So if you're ready to win big, call Vacations Hawaii at 591-4777 or visit pointVacationsHawaii.com.
Today, more than ever, we local people are living longer than any other state in the Union, with more seniors, baby boomers, and caregivers. Generations Radio promotes the importance to be proactive as we all age. The radio team will focus on issues facing our seniors and their families, finding resources to navigate healthy aging along with financial, legal, and caregiving information. So join Percy Ihara from 5 until 6 each Saturday, right here on AM 690 The Answer. Focusing on the issues facing our seniors and their families today. Here's our Generations Radio host, Percy Ihara.
Welcome back to Generations Radio. We're here talking about a very serious topic, but I did want to talk about next week's event. September 23rd, 24th, 25th, next Friday, Saturday, Sunday at the Blaisdell Center there, the largest senior fair in Hawaii. And actually, from what I understand, it's the second largest in the United States. In one location, 3 days, about 23,000 plus seniors and their families will walk through the Blaisdell Exhibit Center there. Because we're Honolulu, I mean, California's got tons of them all over the California, but this one, and so they have an ambassador every year of the senior fair, and most of them are over 60. Right. You know that, but this year they have a 56-year-old as their ambassador this year.
That's you.
That's me.
Right on.
When Mike Roselle called me up, said, Percy, we want you as an ambassador. Are you okay with that? I said, no, I'm not okay with it. I'm only 56.
Get your AARP
I'll
card
wait about
and go.
10 years. I said, well, but, so I said, you know what? Let me talk to our staff at the magazine, and I'll call you back. So 3 days later, I call him back, and he goes, before you start, if you say no, I got 15 reasons why you need to say yes. I said, no, we decided. I'll do it. I will be the youngest ambassador of the senior fair. But really, it's really about what I do and my commitment to the community, and like yourselves here, and I appreciate you coming on. Besides myself, we got to change that radio commercial. It says Saturday. We're actually on Sunday now from 3 to 4 on AM 690. And my co-host, Melissa Mansfield, the newest gerontologist in the state of Hawaii, so congratulations to her.
Thank you.
But today's topic, I've always had a difficult conversation with that because our friend just passed away recently. And before that, I thought about it, last week. Besides my grandmother passed away about 20 years ago, I really don't have anybody that close to me passed away recently until last month. So it's a little difficult for me as an individual. But so we're here with Dr. Terry from St. Francis Hospice, along with Director Holly and Mr. Ken Zeri from Hospice Hawaii. Melissa, what's our next question?
We want to talk about advanced care directives. How can we prepare? And what I found the best way to prepare is to write our wishes down so our family members aren't guessing at the end of life. This happened with my uncle. Nobody knew even what type of flowers that he wants. What type of music does he want? It's so important to let everybody know because it's unfair for us as loved ones to have to make that decision, especially when we're already grieving.
The decision to have the talk about advanced healthcare directives is probably one of the most important decisions and discussions we'll have with our family and loved ones in our life. You were just mentioned we don't even know what kind of flowers. That's kind of almost after the fact. The most important thing is just what is important to you. What is your life wish? I had a patient of mine that was on hospice years ago, and he had this discussion with his spouse that his goal was to live life and to enjoy life, and he didn't want it artificially prolonged. He wanted to be able to live it as he has always lived, and when he could no longer do that, he was accepting. And so when he came on to hospice, we sat down and we talked, and he looked at his wife and said, you know what, we're going on a cruise. Mm-hmm. And so I had my discussion with him, and the nurse went out, and we prepared him, got him ready, went on a cruise. He came back, went on another cruise, came back, went on another cruise, came back. Wow. He had been on so many cruises in his last 6 months to year of life that more than he had been his whole life. Amazing. And that's because he he identified to his family what was really important, and they supported him. And the thing about hospice is, once again, it's focusing on life. When people have cancer, they suddenly think, oh my God, I'm dying of cancer. And the truth is, no, you're living with cancer. And so what we try to do is we really support that. And so if your wish is to go to Vegas, if your wish is to be with your family, what we do is we work as a team with your doctor, with your family, with your friends to help you do that. And that's one of the things that we do every single day, but it's not one that people tend to hear about. And so having the discussion with your family, look, if I were ever in this situation where I couldn't take care of my wife, or I could never listen to the radio or do this, don't do anything that would prolong me in that condition. I'm okay with things as long as I'm happy and I'm able to do this. But family members often don't know because the discussion isn't there. And the best time to have this discussion is when you're healthy.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't wait till everything's happening, because by then people are emotional and no one's thinking properly. And advanced health care directives are important, and having that discussion starting with your doctor can be done at your next appointment.
Melissa, in Hawaii we have a Uniform Health Care Decisions Act, and it was slightly modified from a national movement that was happening 15, 20 years ago. Importantly, the Advanced Health Directive does two things. One, it kind of talks about what Terry alluded to, is if I can't make decisions for myself, if I'm in the last days or weeks or months of my life, this is how I want to be treated. I want to be able to do the things that are of value to me, that are important to me and my family. The other piece of the Advanced Directive is critically important, and it says, if I can't make decisions for myself, I want to appoint this person. I want to appoint my wife to make these decisions for me. I want to appoint my daughter if my wife can't do it. That's called a legally authorized representative. It can be a surrogate decision maker. It can be a power of attorney. I guess commonly that we say durable power of attorney for healthcare decisions. That's perhaps one of the most important things to do, is to give that power to someone if I can't speak for myself. When I do that, if I've given that power to my wife, which I have in my own advanced directive, then Laurel has to know what is important to me. What is quality of life for me, and she has to be able to make those decisions on my behalf.
Dr. Terry?
The other important thing in assigning this power of attorney, this durable power of attorney, is that you're selecting one person to make decisions not as the boss, but as somebody who will carry out your wishes when you can't. One challenge that we have is, as parents, we spend our whole lives trying to make sure that our children are taken care of, make sure that they're not fighting with each other, trying to bring harmony, if possible, into the lives of our family. Yet the decision-making process, when no one is designated, is one that tears families apart, because people start fighting and they disagree. And if you don't have somebody that's actually dedicated to speaking for you, then they all have somewhat of an equal say. And if nobody knows your wishes, then your legacy is left with a family that has anger, doubt, frustration, and a conversation could prevent all that. So this is a living, lasting legacy that goes way beyond your time.
And at 56, you should have yours.
My wife kind of knows what I want. I don't have it in writing. You're right. But we've been to a couple of funerals, and we've had this discussion before. When our family member passed away about 2 years ago, I've always discussed it because of what I do, and I work with seniors every day. I told her that I want to have Earth, Wind, and Fire music, my favorite group. Some of the food, I love Vietnamese summer rolls, and chicken katsu. It's not going to be somber. We're going to have great music. Absolutely. As long as you outlive me.
No rush, but let us know.
But no, because of what I do, and I love the movies. What was that movie about the bucket list?
Bucket list.
The
bucket list.
But the actor Jack Nicholson and anyway. But I've always, because I work with seniors every day, I always try to bring that up. I have clients that call me, I've been to Kaiser, been to the hospital, and I'm sitting at the deathbed with my client. In fact, this one just recently happened December of last year, and brought her niece in. She didn't have any kids. She goes, okay, this is where you call when I pass away. And she just told me point blank, I'm ready to go, Percy. And it was like December 21st, I believe. And I said, no, I've known you for over 15 years. You're doing fine. You'll get over this. He said, no, I'm done. I'm really done. I had no regrets. And sure enough, on December 24th, she passed.
So Percy, I want to for the listeners, I want to really differentiate between a couple of things. You all have talked about the music and the food that you want, and that's really funeral planning.
Right.
And that's how I want the celebration of my life to be. But what we're talking about is care planning before I die,
Yeah.
and that's really important. My dad recently passed away, and he had been really private. When Mom died, he didn't want any memorial services, and we were, because he wanted to respect Mom's privacy, we're a bunch of disrespectful children, and we said, no, we're having a party when Dad died, and we did. And so that was a funeral plan. But before then, Dad had appointed my sister as a primary power of attorney because she lived in the same town on the mainland, and had said, this is what my wishes are. So we didn't have a terrible, agonizing set of conversations in the hospital. Mm-hmm. We knew what we needed to do, and we were able to do it. Both things are important, but what makes your life better is the advance directive.
Exactly.
Right.
You know, at 42 years old, I actually just completed mine.
Right on.
And it's very liberating knowing that I make those choices.
Yep.
I decide what I want at the end of life. And I can't tell you, I called my sister and I said, this is exactly what I want. And she's like, well, what if? I go, nope, no what ifs. This is exactly, can you do it? And she said, yes, I'll do it.
Yes, Dr. Terry.
One thing that's also important is this is what I call a living document. So as your life changes, this document needs to be changed. So many of our listeners probably went through some sort of estate planning where they had a will,
Right.
and you know, somewhere within that big binder is a medical power of attorney and all of that. Yes. And so what happened is, you know, they filled this out in 1983 as part of healthcare planning, and now things have drastically changed. And so it's important to pull those documents out and say, you know, is this still relevant to my life now? I'm not speaking about the will and all that. I'm speaking about the medical part. Is this still consistent? You know, because most people, when we're young and invincible, we want everything done and, you know, nothing's going to happen.
That's right.
But as we get older, develop diseases, we start to look at life differently. And that's where these documents can be changed. And it's not a complicated process to change your wish. It's just a matter of re-signing another document. And then the important thing is, oftentimes with my family members is when I see a patient, is they'll say, oh, yeah, we have that done. We just don't know where it is.
Oh.
And so then what happens is we can't use it because we can't see it. And so
Very
if
true.
you have those documents and you prepare those documents, like in your sister, photocopy, send it to her and say, here, if anything should ever happen and you become my decision maker, bring this paper with you.
And I did give it to my doctor as well.
Yeah, just put it on the refrigerator.
And all of us are pretty much using electronic medical records now, and all of us have the capacity to scan that document in, and so that it becomes a part of your medical record. So, so if you're at Queens or at HPH or probably even up at the Tripler system, that your advanced healthcare directive, most recent copy, can be readily accessible to all of your healthcare providers. We all certainly have it in our medical records for our hospice programs that we can scan it and look at it. So make that a living document.
And take it with you on vacation.
Oh, yeah. No, it's so true. But I've told a story before that I have a couple of fire captains, and one of the first things they do when they come in and get a call is to look around for the post or the medical directive. So it's really, really important because they say 70% of their calls are for seniors. That's a scary number. But I had a client it's been many years now. They called hospice, and she was at a facility, and they needed skilled care, and they were running out of money. So they called me and asked if I can help them out from a financial point of view. I said sure. And then mom got really bad, so they brought her back home out of the facility. And then about a month later, she called me up. You know, they called hospice, by the way. And about a month or 2 months later, they go, Percy, it's weird. My mom's getting better. And so you said 6 months. Now, what happens if they do get better? What happens?
So I'm glad that you mentioned that, because we do have that phenomenon, if you will, of patients
I'll be honest
getting
with
better.
you, it was the food. She didn't like the food.
Facility. It could be.
No, seriously. Home cooking. She just
That's
felt
right.
better.
Right.
No way.
But I think that there's some studies out there nationally that look at sometimes the treatment of the illness can be more devastating and suffering than no treatment at all. And sometimes just that focus of being able to live life the way that you want, which is what hospice does, is allows that life the way that you want to live can boost spirits. And sometimes we find that our patients do get better. Sometimes the burden of medications that they were taking prior to coming on hospice, or the pain and suffering and symptoms that they had related to the treatment itself, prevented them from eating. And so they do get better. And patients do graduate from hospice, and there is a process.
It's a free service.
I
would call them as soon as
Well,
possible.
it's not free. It's
Well, Medicare pays it,
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
So one of the examples of this was a patient that I had years ago who came to me after suffering a very devastating heart attack in the hospital, and he was told that he had a week to live, and he came into my hospice facility back in Arizona, and I simplified a lot of his medications, talked to him. He was actually estranged from his children, very depressed about that, and so we made efforts to connect with his family, and over an amount of time, he started getting better and better and better, and he got to the point where he what we call graduated from our program. And he wound up going back home. He had reestablished with his children. And about 4 years later, after I first met him, he actually wrote me a letter and he said, "I wish you all the best moving to Hawaii."
Where else would you want to live?
Right.
Exactly.
So when you do graduate from hospice, do you still provide them service, or do you offer them other resources? What do you do when you graduate?
When somebody graduates, we essentially discharge them to self-care. If they are in need of additional services, then we'll coordinate that. We'll make those referrals. We'll help that get set up. We don't just walk out one day and say, "See ya," and not come back.
Okay.
There's a week or so that we kind of prep them and get them ready for doing that. It really is can be a bittersweet thing. All of those wraparound services that a hospice brings to bear in your family that has made your life better, that has kind of kept your condition tuned up better, if you will, go away. And so there's a loss of not having the hospice. Unfortunately, because of the rules and regulations, if we recognize that they are doing better, they're going to live longer than 6 months, if we don't discharge them, then we are not following the rules and we're subject to some punishment by Medicare. So we have to do that.
Okay. What about resources? Are families still able to use the resources because they're still grieving in a sense? Are we able to still come and maybe do a support group?
Well, one of the things that we do as part of our discharging somebody from our hospice program, it's not just, like you said, we don't just say goodbye, you're on your own. What we do is actually a process where with our doctors, our social worker, and our nurses, we try to set them up with community resources so they can benefit from resources in the community that we were providing. And so, and oftentimes, some people, like the gentleman I talked about who wrote me the letter, he didn't need anything, and we actually arranged for him to have some community volunteers just to come by and visit him. And so we really try to make sure that people are taken care of, and if we feel that discharging somebody is not in their best interest and it's not quite safe, we work very, very hard to ensure that the discharge is appropriate because we're caring for people.
Right.
Wonderful. So I wanted to bring up volunteers. I think they are very important, almost kind of the backbone. I recently completed my volunteer with Hospice Hawaii, and very extensive, and I loved it. And I found that you actually have to have a percentage of volunteers for hospice. Can you talk about that?
Mm-hmm.
So the hospice benefit actually requires a 5% match of volunteer services. So what that means is all of our staff that we have that are paid staff, 5% of all of their hours added together have to be provided by a volunteer. And so that takes a lot of work to kind of recruit, to address those needs, to be able to provide that 5% match. And so hospices do look for volunteers, and there's all kinds of services that our volunteers can offer, whether it's companionship, whether it's a No One Dies Alone program. What our volunteers are able to offer our patients and families is outstanding and miraculous.
I actually began my career as a hospice volunteer when I was in my undergraduate. And I think it really prepared me and helped me for medical school. And I've mentored many people who've applied to medical schools. And, oftentimes medical students are drawn into the ER, the hospital. And I always tell people, if you can be a hospice volunteer, you will connect with people on a level that has deep meaning, and it will affect how you treat patients. And so you don't have to be a retired person to have volunteered. You can be somebody in high school. You can be somebody in college. It doesn't even have to be part of your career path to becoming a doctor. And so this is really an ability to give back to your community. As a matter of fact, I'm teaching a class for St. Francis tomorrow. So if you have any thoughts of providing your talents, and sometimes it's just a matter of sitting with somebody, please do, because it's invaluable, and we couldn't do our business without it.
Melissa, the folks that created hospice care 45 years ago or so really set out to develop a model of care that was completely an alternative to the traditional model of care. They created a model of care that was based in the community as an alternative to dying in the hospitals. And it was a social model of care as much as it was a medical model. And they knew that volunteers absolutely needed to be a part of it to connect that program to the community that it served.
Do you find, because I find that a lot of times people are reluctant to volunteer is because there's a maximum or minimum amount of hours that they need to do within a year or a month, and I let them know that that's not true. Does your organization require that?
So volunteers, there's several reasons sometimes that prohibit or that people are afraid to volunteer. And so while some people want to give back to their community, sitting with someone who's dying could be fearful for them. And so there's all different types of opportunities to volunteer within the hospice, whether it's in the office, whether it is supporting the bereavement program, or whether it is working directly with patients. And the hospice provides all of the volunteers the appropriate training that they need. And we kind of assess those volunteers for those talents that they have coming to and make sure that we fit you to the right type of service.
Well, I thought about this question. I do a lot of volunteer work, but what you guys do, Dr. Terry, Holly, and Ken, I tell you, you guys are angels, because I've been through this. I've had several conversations about this and what you guys do. And I'm not saying I'm a crybaby, but I don't know how you guys put up with the emotions and dealing with families, because it's very difficult for me in dealing with my family and my close friends.
I came from a background of working in a level 1 trauma center and spent a lot of my time taking care of patients in the intensive care unit, saving lives, doing the stuff you watch on TV. And I can tell you that hospice, and it's what ultimately led me to move away into hospice full time, was that it was very rewarding because you're taking care of people who appreciate it. I took care of somebody's husband, this wonderful lady. I took care of her husband. He passed away. Her way of saying thank you was she came to me and baked fresh goods for me every week for a year. Wow. I didn't ask for it. Honestly, my belly didn't want it, but she did that. And it's because people see that we're there at their time of need and we're helping them, and we're not promising, we're not promising things that we can't deliver on. We're really trying to help people. And the thing about it that's really important is we connect with people.
It's a sacred space. Caring for somebody at the end of their life and be with their family is an incredibly powerful and sacred place, and we are privileged to be a part of it. Ultimately, when the day is done, our lives are made better for the work that we're able to do.
Well, thank you, all of you. You guys are a great service. It's a great service, guys. But I always recommend you go to your doctor with your parents or your loved one, your spouse. But it's really important to ask the questions, have the conversations very early. As we're all going to age, we're all going to pass at some point. But I really thank you, Ken Zeri from Hospice Hawaii, Holly and Dr. Terry from St. Francis Hospice, and of course my co-host, Melissa Mansfield.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Again, every Saturday from 5 to 6, Sunday from 3 to 4 here on AM 690, The Answer. Aloha and live well.
Thank you.